Well, thank you so much for joining us here for Fraud in America. We're joined today by Attorney General Phil Weiser. He is in Colorado and joining us, and we really appreciate you being here today, Attorney General Weiser. Um, so I wanted to start with maybe just jumping in and saying it's timely that you're joining us. Your office just announced yesterday, and I know this was a little, your office intervened a little while ago in a False Claims Act case against Regeneron, and we'll get back to that later. But I thought it was interesting, it was and timely that the office just announced yesterday that intervention. So that's exciting times.
Well, this is an area that's important to us. And so we're going to stay engaged and active in this important realm and excited to be with you to talk about our work under our new False Claims Act. And we've actually been in the work of Medicaid fraud for quite some time. So that is not new.
So I know you've worked before your time in the as Attorney General. You clerked for multiple Supreme Court justices. You've worked in multiple White Houses. Can you give us a little bit of your background before you got to where you are today?
I am happy to do so. After law school, I came out to Colorado as a law clerk for Judge David Ebell. That's what helped me fall in love with Colorado. For many people who come here, you know about the allure of Colorado and an incredible place to live and raise kids. I was lured to DC to work for Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Justice Byron White, and then to join the Justice Department's Antitrust Division, where I worked on cases there under Joel Klein, who was at that point the Assistant Attorney General. I was able to come back to Colorado to be a professor of law and telecommunications, stayed active here in the community on a range of fronts, and then to go back to DC again to work with President Barack Obama, both in the Justice Department and in the White House. I've served as the Dean of the University of Colorado Law School, and now I serve as Colorado Attorney General.
Well, that is a fun and strange trip, but I love it. No, that's great. So you were really integral to the passing of this most recent version of the Colorado False Claims Act that really expanded into the non-Medicaid parts of the fraud against the government. Can you kind of explain the process and kind of what drove you to kind of have understand the importance of expanding the False Claims Act in Colorado?
I'm a longtime follower of our federal False Claims Act, knowing that its qui tam provisions play a critical role in fighting fraud. And as we begin to see during the pandemic, a lot of funding in, infuse a number of areas. One of my reactions was fear about fraud that would come into this realm, as unfortunately it often does. For those who are followers of this area, Harry Truman actually started his work in the Senate that got the attention of FDR on addressing fraud during World War II. Anytime you've got serious government spending, there's a risk of fraud. We didn't have any state False Claims Act in Colorado, however, and our office had no authority outside of Medicaid fraud. So I advocated for a law that would give us tools to go after those who defraud the government. And this is something that was new in Colorado. We're still developing this law and these authorities. It is critical because for people who contract with the government or have grants, they need to do what they say they're going to do. And if they engage in any form of fraud, we want the ability to go after them and to hold them to account.
And I think, especially after a lot of this, infrastructure and COVID funding is coming into the state, I'm sure you've seen a lot more fraud increased in the state there. And have you seen a lot of activity around those kinds of things? What kinds of kind of cases you're seeing under your False Claims Act now?
Unfortunately, it's still premature with our law being fairly new and our caseload developing. But I will make what I'll call an adjacent observation that gives people a sense of the troubling dynamics here, which is we've seen unemployment insurance fraud that we've created a task force to address, and we've had a number of criminal prosecutions going after fraudsters who have found different ways to tap into this fund. We have every reason to believe there are other such areas of fraud and concern, and we want to make sure that we are addressing them. If people are listening or know of efforts to defraud Colorado government, whether it's state government or local government, we'd love to know about it. And you can go to our website, which is coag.gov, to report those frauds.
And one interesting aspect of the Colorado False Claims Act is that the retaliation provisions are actually a little bit broader under the Colorado FCA. Did you have that specifically in mind when you were kind of helping craft this law?
We're concerned about this issue. If you are able to retaliate against whistleblowers or relators, as they're often known, that is a way to undermine the effectiveness of the law. So it's very important to us to protect those who are coming forward with information that will help us hold fraudsters accountable.
And I know you're really active kind of enforcement in the opioid space. Can you tell me about some of your efforts there? I know you've been very, very active in trying to get those practices stopped in your state.
And to be clear, Jacqueline, you're talking about the opioid crisis and the different ways that has really been devastating here in Colorado.
Yes, so I know that you've been involved in a lot of the settlements that are the broad global settlements that have been going on, getting money for infrastructure and abatement back from these drug companies.
Purdue Pharma is a poster child for irresponsible and dangerous and harmful conduct by a company who sought to make money preying on others. The idea that opioids, in this case Oxycontin, were not addictive is, with the benefit of any hindsight or reflection, implausible. And yet they managed to make it an effective marketing campaign where doctors and others in the healthcare establishment began pushing these dangerous addictive drugs. We're now holding them accountable. And in Colorado, we've brought back $770 million in counting to address this crisis. This is a part of our work addressing those engaging in fraud and to remediate a crisis that has harmed so many communities here in Colorado.
And that's really, really important work, and we salute you for it. Some of the other important issues you've been working on in your office involve initiatives you've been pushing there.
On the area of youth mental health, we are all in, and I am personally, as a parent of young kids, terrified. The pandemic and the rise of social media for young people have been a 1-2 punch where we know the kids are not doing okay. That's why we're suing Meta right now for practices that are keeping our kids up at night, are bringing our kids down dark holes, and are harming young people. All the while, they're telling parents and kids, don't worry, these products aren't addictive or are harmful. Their internal research shows the opposite. We also know that companies like Juul have contributed to a vaping crisis among young people. We took them to court, and we have now $32 million that we're investing to address youth mental health concerns. We've got a upcoming round that we're going to invest in special partnerships between schools and communities to help young people develop healthier relationship skills, trusted connections with adults they can talk to, and healthier lifestyles so they don't turn to vaping or other dangerous substances.
And there's really no more important work out there. So that's excellent. I hope more states adopt these kinds of policies. And it's really rampant right now. I have a young daughter as well, so I think that I love to see more states being focused on that kind of. Okay, you've been talking a lot about the good things you've been doing for the citizens of your state. Along those lines, you've been doing a lot of work in the consumer protection fraud area. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of your efforts in that area?
I do, Jackie. And I want to start by emphasizing a point that doesn't get made enough. There are responsible companies out there who follow the law and who are committed to doing business the right way, treating their employees right, treating their customers right. If you've got companies out there that are cutting corners, that are cheating consumers, they've got an unfair advantage in the marketplace if they're not held to account. Let me start with airlines because that's a topic that has gotten some notice as of late. Delta had to cancel a whole number of flights, putting people out. And there are rules that we fought for in the consumer protection area. These are rules at the federal level that make sure that if your flight is canceled, you can get your money back. And it's really important that consumers get satisfaction as airline travelers. We have now a memorandum of understanding that we forged with the U.S. Department of Transportation that says we as state AGs can investigate these cases and work with them as a partner agency. And that took a lot of work to get these right rules into place and get the right relationship in place. To go to another area, early in my tenure, we took on our local telephone company who promised people we're going to give you a price lock guarantee, except they didn't lock the prices. They kept raising the prices, and we got $8 million back to consumers. We've also stood up for consumers in the area of towing and in rental leases, where companies acted in ways that were predatory and that took advantage of consumers. In the area of this renter, Four-Star Realty, they were not giving back security deposits as required by law. The towing company called Wyatt's Towing was towing people illegally, taking advantage of people. And finally, I'll mention a practice that we're looking out for. You hear the phrase junk fees or drip pricing, where consumers don't know that they're going to face these fees, but then they get last minute, put upon them. And in many cases, they've got no choice. I'll give you the example that I remember, which is going to a hotel and being told, we need you to pay a resort fee. And I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't know about that. And they said, well, yes, you have to pay it. And I said, what's it for? And they'll say, using the gym. And I'll say, but I'm not going to use the gym. They say, you got to pay it anyway. That's not okay to surprise consumers with these junk fees. We've taken a number of these hotel um, resorts basically to task and now have them under legal requirements not to do that again.
I mean, nobody. That's it's such a problem. I think you see a price of $39 for your ticket, and then you go and it ends up being $50. It's so frustrating. So that's fantastic. Um, so I mean, you clearly have you're driven to redress fraud, not just on the government, but against the people in your state. Do you have a sense of kind of what drove you to kind of want to do this work, want to work be work for the government, but also want to just help your fellow citizens?
I'm a first generation American, and my mom and my grandparents both are survivors of the Holocaust and came to the United States believing this was the land of freedom and opportunity for all. I'm a big believer that everyone, regardless of your language background, regardless of your level of education, deserves to be treated fairly. And the fact that some people can be preyed on because they don't have a law degree, for example, um, really pisses me off. Everyone deserves to be treated fairly. And one of the bothersome realities of our economy right now is there's some companies that, unless you are a lawyer or have a lot of time and training, they're just going to wear you down. And then you're not going to get treated properly and you're going to get overcharged. We want to fight for everybody, and we don't want to allow companies to engage in those sorts of practices.
Absolutely. I mean, definitely what we're out here fighting for, and fraud in America. We want to expose all of that. Sure, people have resources that they need, and you're out there trying to do that. That's fantastic. Well, is there any other kind of big picture issues that you see that we as people that are trying to be good fraud fighters out in the world should be paying attention to, and should be asking our lawmakers to step up to the bat on?
I want to talk about fraud against workers because this is an area that we've really focused on. And we've been able to go in Colorado to the legislature and improve our laws to protect consumers, workers, and protect the integrity of government too. In the worker front, there's an abusive practice that's known as training repayment agreement provisions, or TRAPs. And what happens is you get a company that says, and there was a good article in the New York Times recently, they talked about hairstylists. And they say, oh, we'll hire you to be a hairstylist, but we need you to take this course. And we're going to charge you $50,000 for the course. And if you work for us for 2 years, we'll forgive it. But if you leave before then, you've got to pay it all back. That's an abusive practice because it has the functional equivalent of being a non-compete agreement, and it locks you in, often as a vulnerable worker, to a job that frankly doesn't really have a right to keep your services. You should have a right to compete in the marketplace. But if you have one of these agreements, you can find yourselves locked in or face these huge legal bills or repayment bills. That's not okay. So we're on the lookout for any abuses of this. We got a law passed preventing traps. We took action recently against Valvoline, who had been using non-compete agreements illegally and improperly. That's something in Colorado we don't tolerate. Workers have the right to be paid fairly for their services, and if companies are using those agreements of any kind to prevent workers from being paid fairly, we're going to hold them to account.
That's so interesting. I think people don't really know about those kinds of agreements. I think people non-compete agreements in kind of white collar jobs, they don't really think about the impact that those kinds of agreements can have regular people. And those people are more vulnerable than than most. So that's really important work. So thank you for that. So, I mean, I'll close out by just saying, I think you're doing some of the most important work out there, and we really appreciate you. You're kind of a beacon out there in Colorado, and so thank you for standing up for the False Claims Act and for the citizens of your state and for your government. Any last kind of words you want to say? Close out.
I want to close by saying that we're living at a time that is a lower trust time where people believe in many important respects our economic system is rigged against them, that no one's fighting for them. And Jackie, I appreciate what you said. We in this office, we serve as a beacon. We have one client, the people of Colorado. Whether you're a consumer, whether you're a worker, whether you're a taxpayer, we've got your back. We're fighting for you. We want to make sure that you're not cheated or defrauded. We can't do this work alone. We need your help. If you're a consumer who's been scammed, stopfraudcolorado.gov is where you can turn. If you're a taxpayer or a whistleblower who knows about fraud against the government, I mentioned coag.gov is our website. I'm a big believer that our democratic republic is not a spectator sport, it's a team sport. We need all Coloradans working together, helping us show how our government needs to work, making sure that we continue to protect people.
Thank you so much, Attorney General Weiser, for joining us today. We appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, tuning in for Fraud in America. Thank you to our sponsor, Getnick Law. And we will see you next week on Fraud in America. Thank you.
Our 2024 sponsor is Getnick Law, a boutique Manhattan law firm dedicated to fighting fraud and promoting business integrity. Learn more about the firm at www.getnicklaw.com. If you believe you've witnessed fraud against the government or on the financial markets, or want to learn more about the laws that exist to fight fraud, visit taf.org, where you can find a directory of whistleblower attorneys who work across the country. On our website, you can find information about the nation's whistleblower laws and programs, and a way to donate to our organization as we continue to fight attacks on whistleblowers and these laws. Fraud in America is presented by the Anti-Fraud Coalition. Jacqueline DeMar is our host. James King is our executive producer. The website for Fraud in America was designed by Wide Eye Creative. Our artwork is by PPA Agency. And our theme song is by Spatial Relations.